fire, and dice. Together on one scratch ticket can make your dreams come true. Yes, it's Fire and Dice. The new $10 scratch game with thousands of dollars to be won. Match your numbers with any of the winning numbers and win the prize shown up to $125,000. You can double or triple your prize with Fire and Dice. Available from all lotto agents and runners. There's cash to catch with just a scratch.
Coming up on the VC3 News Update, Prime Minister Dr. Alfie Gonsalves hailed the progress of SVG since the country first gained independence. Eligible voters in quarantine to be granted waiver on election day. And the Electoral Office is working to ensure that all COVID-19 safety protocols are implemented to protect voters at all polling stations on election day.
And in your local sports, BOSVG All-Stars registered a 41-run win over hard hitters in the NLA TBPO softball cricket competition. And Kesrick Williams prepares to return to international cricket as part of the West Indies T20 international team to tour New Zealand. Regionally, West Indies batsman Chris Gayle is proving he's still a threat at 41 after he smashed a second half-century in the 5 games for Kings 11 Punjab in the IPL.
We'll have these stories and more coming up at 7 p.m. on the VC3 News Update.
Good evening and welcome to this week's edition of Roundtable Talk. Of course, as you know, general elections are due in St. Vincent and the Grenadines on November the 5th. That's in another 8 days or so. And of course, we have as our special guest this evening on Roundtable Talk, the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and also leader of the Unity Labour Party. 8 days to go. The election fever is very much high. How is it going? How does it feel on the ground?
First of all, I want to thank you for having me, Theresa. And I want to say good day to all, good evening to all viewers and those who are following you away from St. Vincent and the Grenadines on the stream. From the standpoint of the ULP, I think the campaign is going quite well. A groundswell of support has galvanized the party. Our supporters are anxiously awaiting the day. They want to get out to vote. Anxious, not fearing that they're losing. They're very confident, actually. And what we saw on Sunday night when we launched the main manifesto at Richmond Hill, and on last evening, just 48 hours later, when we launched the youth manifesto, I mean, the crowds, it's not easy to fill the field at Richmond Hill, and it was packed. Mm-hmm. And similarly at Rabaca to overflowing. The objective observers tell me that Rabaca was perhaps 30% bigger than the one at Richmond Hill. And I get the sense, I've been going around to a lot of events from all over the country. Before I came here, I was in Rose Hall at the opening of a sporting facility. I was at Curtains Hill. People were waiting for me at Curtains Hill on my way up here to VC3. And the same thing on the windward side of the island. You know, there is a movement, a groundswell Last night I called it an avalanche.
What do you think is responsible for this groundswell of support, in your estimation?
Well, I think people, first of all, they're satisfied that the government has been doing a pretty good job. They're pleased that we came out of COVID quite well. We have handled COVID quite well, both in respect of lives and livelihoods. There's no country in the Caribbean which has handled it better than we have handled it. In fact, some may argue, some may say quite persuasively that we have handled it best. I mean, we haven't had any deaths, we haven't had anybody sick going to the hospital. We haven't used the isolation facility other than for the purpose of securing somebody as distinct from somebody being sick and required to be in isolation. Though the economy, all the economies in the Western world have had a nosedive, but in the Caribbean, we have nosedive far less than anybody else, any other country. And indeed, in terms of our revenues, the government revenues, because of the structure of the economy as it has evolved, because of the way we have handled COVID, none of the hysteria, none of the lockdowns, none of the state of emergencies, our revenues have remained fairly good, 3.4% above last year's number at the end of September. The other countries are between 25 and 50% in the whole, I mean, in terms of less revenues. And that's why we have been able to do many of the things with for the relief with COVID, the salvation package, as I call it, that we have been able to do these things, and donors and friends have seen how we have handled it well, and they have made important contributions to keep us going pretty well. And all those things point to an issue of leadership and judgment and organization, and people feel safe with that. So I think that's an important question which is on the agenda, the leadership issue. Then people realize, the voters realize, the country realizes that when we got St. Vincent and Grenadines in 2001, we were in a dead end. Look, the economy needed to be transformed. The old plantation, agricultural type economy, though agriculture is still vital as an important pillar, the structure of the economy based on preferences and the like, once the banana preferences had gone, you were in a complete dead end. You needed to transform education. That wasn't being done. We launched the education revolution. We moved very swiftly in the modern ICT period through a number of initiatives. And as a result, we have a reasonably diversified economy, even though there are lead sectors like tourism and agriculture. We're seeing what is happening. We're growing in fisheries, we're growing in manufacturing, and we're keeping the country safe. We're dealing with the climate change issues, matters of natural disasters, the way we have handled them, and that every time we have had a real challenge, what is brought about by natural disaster or brought about by the vagaries of the global economy, like the recession, the depression of 2008, and in the immediate years thereafter. Every time these challenges have arisen, I, as the leader of the government, I've been able to go to the people and say, look, this is the problem. This is what we are suggesting that we should do to solve them. And we move expeditiously, stabilize, do work internally, get supports externally. And we come out of those difficulties, and people see that time and time again, and that on the things which matter, we have created over 12,000 jobs since 2001, and the population has increased by less than 2,000 in that similar period. We have built, not we the government, but we and the private sector, the individuals in the country, number of houses moved from just over 30,000 to 43,000. Water, on just about 70%, just under 70% of the people had pipe-borne water in their homes. Now you have 98, 99% of the people with pipe-borne water in their homes. Similar thing with electricity, almost similar kind of numbers. We have reduced poverty, very much so. Indigence, you can see on the roads. We have a poverty study, which is now incomplete. But if you look at the average per capita, average incomes per head in this country moved from around $8,000 in 2001 to just about $20,000, slightly over $20,000 annually. Public servant salaries have gone up, other people's salaries have gone up. We have contained inflation, low to moderate levels in terms of the cost of living. We are exporting food and animals to Grenada. We're doing to Trinidad. We are feeding Barbados. And all of these things, you look on the road, you see the number of motor cars. There were 7,000 plus in 2001. There are now 30-something thousand vehicles. We have expanded the health facilities remarkably. We have done work on Milton Cato. We have to do more work there. We have done the polyclinics. We have done clinics. We have done the modern medical complex in Georgetown. We are about to roll out, after the years of serious study of the site and the place for, and having done all the designs for the acute referral hospital at Annesville, all those things. And you look at the way in which, when we opened, some people tend to forget that it's just in 2017, February, that we opened the Argyle International. Look at the kinds of investments that are coming in from overseas, real good, solid investments in hotels and so on and so forth, for job creation. The sporting facilities have expanded immensely, cultural facilities, our regional policy, our foreign policy. So people feel that, look, we have a criticism here, we have a criticism there, the world is not perfect, but Ralph and his team have done well. And the times are too challenging. The situation is too dicey or too risky to take chances. I mean, this is not a lotto game. And when the opposition says they're there too long, and the question is this: how long is too long when you're doing pretty well? And what is on offer on the other side is very underwhelming. They have no plan. They look disunited. Their leadership is vacillating and weak. They take some positions in relation to Taiwan, which, and selling passports. These things are just not comprehensible.
And we'll talk some more about that when we come back after this, our first break. Back at...
Coming up on the VC3 News Update, Prime Minister Dr. Ralphie Gonsalves hailed the progress of SVG since the country first gained independence. Eligible voters in quarantine to be granted waiver on election day. And the Electoral Office is working to ensure that all COVID-19 safety protocols are implemented to protect voters at all polling stations on election day.
And in your local sports, BOSVG All-Stars registered a 41-run win over hard hitters in the NLA TBPO softball cricket competition. And Kesrick Williams prepares to return to international cricket as part of the West Indies T20 international team to tour New Zealand. Regionally, West Indies batsman Chris Gayle is proving he's still a threat at 41 after he smashed a second half-century in the 5 games for Kings 11 Punjab in the IPL.
We'll have these stories and more coming up at 7 p.m. on the VC3 News Update.
Welcome back. Prime Minister, during the first segment, you spoke about some of what I consider to be the critical issues that are at stake in the general elections. You spoke about COVID-19, you spoke about the issue of leadership, you spoke about the education revolution. What are the other main issues you think that are at play and at stake here that people will definitely be voting on November the 5th?
Well, those things clearly, and others, the issue concerning jobs is always an important issue, and this is for persons of working age, all the working age persons, and people who are older working now, because we have a significant number of persons who are 60 years of age and over who are working, doing their own businesses or employed in a consultancy capacity and so on. People are living longer. So I want, when I talk about that, I talk about persons from working age. Nowadays, you're looking at people when they finish secondary school,
18.
17, 18, and of course intermittently in between because they have to go to university and the like. As in the opening, I said that we created about 12,000 jobs since 2001. And those numbers are arrived at simply from, first of all, the census numbers by 2012. When we had the 2012 census, we see almost 6,000 persons between 2001 and 2012. And since then, we have had a further increase in jobs. And if you want to look at the proxy numbers, you look at the NIS numbers for persons who are registrants, that is to say, employed persons and own account persons, self-employed and employed persons, people who are workers. And the number is over 12,000 more than in 2001, actively. That's the best proxy you can get. We still have an unemployment problem, but we have to alter the entire structure of the economy, as I outlined earlier, from one which is based on preferences and a set of colonial trade relations to a more open competitive system, which is why I said that we had to build a modern, competitive, many-sided, post-colonial economy, which is at once national, regional, and global. And vital to building that, you require skills, knowledge. And skills, when I'm talking about, not just book skills, all kinds of skills, but you also need your other highly trained university and professional persons. We had to do several things. The education revolution, to build the Argyle International Airport, to build the Canwan Jet Airport. We had to be involved in the ICT revolution, information communications technology revolution. We had to build the Raboka bridge in order to unite mainland St. Vincent, because there was a divide between the Northeast and the rest of the country, and we had to, and you can see what has happened in that part of the country, the immense developments which have taken place because of the road network and bridges and the like. So those are critical things which we needed to do, and we have done them. The Argyle International Airport, before COVID, we started to see it taking off. We had flights from North America, from Canada, and we had from the United States, 2 airlines from the United States and 1 from Canada. In fact, the Tourism Authority, Glen Beach, was doing negotiation with a carrier from the United Kingdom. And those negotiations actually are coming to a conclusion, and you need to have it in the system for about 6 months. So we are on the verge, when I say verge, talking about Virgin, we're on the verge of, I'm talking about Virgin Airlines, we are on the verge of doing something with them so that they could start operating from
Europe?
From June next year.
Okay.
Because you need a 6-month period within the system and the like. At least Glen Beach has been advising me on that, and he has been doing the negotiations. Glen Beach of the Tourism Authority. Look, Teresa, it's Black Sands. If you pass, you see that the 10 villas, they're now doing the whitewashing of the priming of the walls. For the 10 villas, that's 50 rooms. And they're expanding. They're going to build a hotel block of 200. They're all told, and it is finished. It moved slow at certain phases, but it's picking up back again. Then the Marriott, that's 60 million US. The Marriott is 55 million US. That's the hotel that we borrowed the 50 million US from Taiwan, a low-cost loan. And there is Marriott, which will operate. Then Sandals with their beaches, that's $100 million. Then there's Royal Mill on the former Kenboy property at Rathamil. They're working there. You have about 140 workers. By the way, that same entity has purchased the property at Grandview and has refurbished and expanded it. That is a $60 million US, again, venture. Mm-hmm. Then you go out to Diamond, you see they're preparing the ground already. You see the bulldozers are there for the Holiday Inn Express. That's $12 million US. Then in Canouan, there's Soho House, which is a big name brand, which is expanding and completely renovating and expanding and under the Soho House brand, where Tamron used to be. All together, those knocking your head about about $1 billion EC dollars, almost 400 million US dollars. Then you have McDowell from McDowell Glass. You see what they're building going out to the Brighton area there before you reach Diamond. There's a 40-room hotel establishment. People are expanding their hotels, so that there's a big expansion taking place in hotels. And a regional group of investors headed by a Barbadian entrepreneur, well-established Barbadian entrepreneur. They've just purchased Petit Moustique, and part of the alien landholding license proposal, which they put forward for the alien landholding license, which they've received, is to invest in developing a first-class tourism destination there to invest $500 million over a 12-year period. Now, all these things are just incredible. The jobs in construction, the jobs to operate the place you put. The sandals people were here yesterday. Sorry. They said they'd be employing on the construction about 1,000 persons. They're going to start next year by about April, actual construction. And then they want to open in 2022. They want to open by the hotel, the tourism season in 2022. Now, for every room which they build, they're going to require 2.5 workers per room, and they're going to expand up to 350 rooms. So you see the number of jobs you're talking about, and that's why the training which we have been doing, both at the community college and also at the technical institutes, and the program which the British selected St. Vincent as the base for the SKY program, the skills, SKYE, the skills for youth employment. All those are training efforts directed at providing skilled labor, in addition to the pool of technical people which we have already, and of course, university personnel, professionals, as they rise to the managerial ranks. And then the fishing complex, which is, we have one in the fishery center in Oya, the one in Beckway. We see what they're expanding down in Barley. Then Rainforest Seafoods building out at Caliaqua. They're going to buy $20 million worth of fish. Of kongs and lobster and other fish products, marine products. All of these things. Then the big project in the next term, we've started it already. I'm talking about the build out, is the port modernization project at Rose Place. That's a $200 million project. It's, the airport is done. You have to know, you have to transform the seaport. By the way, you look inside of the NDP manifesto, you don't find anything about that. Right now, we are constructing, we started the construction for 47 houses, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and a couple 3 bedrooms, to move the persons who have structures on the beach in houses. I hear the opposition talking about building a high-rise building for them. I mean, the horse has bolted. There's a project which is ongoing. And this is the first part of it. And this is a project involving the CDB and the British government. We have secured monies. I don't know where their collective head is.
We have to take our break now, but when we come back, I want to talk a bit about why leadership matters in this race, and also the issue of foreign policy and how is it going to play out.
Absolutely.
Right? We'll be back in just a moment.
Fire and dice. Together on one scratch ticket can make your dreams come true. Yes, it's Fire and Dice. The new $10 scratch game with thousands of dollars to be won. Match your numbers with any of the winning numbers and win the prize shown up to $125,000. You can double or triple your prize with Fire and Dice. Available from all lotto agents and runners. There's cash to catch with just a scratch.
Coming up on the VC3 News Update, Prime Minister Dr. Alfie Gonsalves hailed the progress of SVG since the country first gained independence. Eligible voters in quarantine to be granted waiver on election day. And the Electoral Office is working to ensure that all COVID-19 safety protocols are implemented to protect voters at all polling stations on election day.
And in your local sports, BOSVG All-Stars registered a 41-run win over hard hitters in the NLA TBPO softball cricket competition. And Kesrick Williams prepares to return to international cricket as part of the West Indies T20 international team to tour New Zealand. Regionally, West Indies batsman Chris Gayle is proving he's still a threat at 41 after he smashed a second half-century in the 5 games for Kings 11 Punjab in the IPL.
We'll have these stories and more coming up at 7 p.m. on the VC3 News Update.
Welcome back. Before the break, we did say that we'll talk about why leadership matters and also the question of foreign policy, but there's a question. How pivotal is the St. Vincent and the Grenadines November 5th, 2020 general elections, not just the St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but the OECS sub-region? This is in light of the threat of Chinese colonization that the region faces and the war of economic terrorism being practiced by the surrogates of the U.S. Republican Party in Cambridge Analytica and SCL. Quite a mouthful there,
Yes.
Prime Minister.
I think the question raises a number of fundamental issues. Look, Teresa, we have had in our region a history of seeking to maintain our independence, strengthen it, and our sovereignty. Because experience has taught us and other countries, if you guard very jealously your sovereignty and your independence, it is a way in which respect is generated. It's a way in which benefits flow. And it's a way in which you yourself, as a people, feel that you own your country. Now, there have been different forms of colonization. There have been direct crown colony rule at one time, then a kind of neo-colonial rule. Imperialism is seeking to rule you in different ways. And you have to evolve a practical set of policies where, very creatively, you stand within the 4 walls of the Charter of the United Nations, defending your sovereignty and independence and your territorial integrity. But you have to have practical engagements and accommodations because the world is one. But you have to do so in a manner which maintains things which are fundamental to you. Like you own your own place, you own your own country. I'm putting it in the simplest of language. Now, what is happening? When difficulties arise, there are always entrepreneurs of all kinds, a number of them vagabonds, who will come to you the odd one may get and do something. And that is problematic in an isolated way. But where the issue becomes real systemic and real challenging is when you have people want to recolonize us by having us depend solely or largely on passport money, which can go in the twinkling of an eye. And then they control you, they transform your very democracy. You have a country in the region of 50,000 people, and 25,000 of them, 25,000 additional, are citizens who buy their passports. They all turn up to vote. What are you going to do? Or a significant number. What are you going to do? Then they mark out your land and say you can't go there. This is our piece. Remember, they don't need alien land holding license now, once they're citizens.
Because they're now nationals.
They're now nationals. They buy it up how they want. And they take the top dollar for it. And bit by bit, you find yourself being enslaved to these amazingly invisible forces. And then they're supported by consultants like the Spawn from SCL and Cambridge Analytica, who want to play with people's minds like they did in the United States of America to help Donald Trump. And so this new-fashioned recolonization through passport sales is bolstered, supplemented, complemented, strengthened by digital colonialism, by these mind benders. Now, that kind of a policy, which in fact the NDP is advancing, it is something which is dangerous to us in St. Vincent, as it is dangerous to the other small countries in the OECS. Ask yourself the question, why serious, strong countries with a nationalist backbone like Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad, why are they not going in for this sort of a thing? Huh? People must ask themselves these questions. And when you have a country where you think that you can raise, when you believe that you can raise 30, 40, 50% of your revenue on passport sales, what's going to happen to your country? They're going to control it. It's not done. You have to do it by hard and smart work, like what I've been outlining a short while ago. We had dealt with tourism. I was dealing with fisheries, the modern scientific agriculture. You see the forerunner of that up at Montreal Gardens, in Montreal, where the greenhouses and younger farmers, less volume but higher value products and so on and so forth. It's the way to go. We're trying to feed ourselves, basically. Now, so the questioner is really asking about these new forms of colonialism, these new forms of recolonization. Those who are a few lawyers and a few accountants and some administrators, some hangers-on and presumably politicians who go for that sort of a thing, then their families will be doing quite well. And they will certainly have homes in Miami. Some of them have passports for Canada in any case already. Some will have for other countries. And in the local language on the block, they just hightail it out of St. Vincent and leave you high and dry. It is a prospect which is really frightening. And St. Vincent and the Grenadines is the only country which has stood up to this. Look, I have two books here. I have one, this one, Cambridge Analytica and the Plot to Break America by Christopher Wiley, a whistleblower. talks about how what the work they did in Trinidad for the UNC party when it was in government, the mind-bending stuff. This one, the Cosmopolites, the coming of the global citizen by Atosa Araxia Ebrahimian. This one tells you about the passport sellers. I would read this for you. See how apt that question is. Page 83. They're talking about Christian Kalin, who is the king of the passport sellers. There's a company in Switzerland. This book talks about him a lot. Published in 2015. The impact of passport sales in St. Kitts made waves in the normally placid eastern Caribbean waters. Kalin, that's Christian Kalin, suddenly had the air of almost every politician in the region, with the notable exception of the president of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. They call me president, but I mean, who has loudly and publicly denounced the idea of selling citizenship, saying he has a, quote, fundamental philosophical objection, unquote, to the concept. These programs, critics argue, undermine the sense of community that ties a country's people together. They're also unfair because they give the rich opportunities and the rights unavailable to everyone else. It goes on. Kalin shrug. He's an old far leftist, referring to the Caribbean leader, referring to me. He'll never be convinced. Of course, he's right about that. I'll never be convinced. The writer goes on to say this. I met with Kalin in St. Kitts one evening. After the country held elections, his phones were ringing off the hook. This is what Kalin said. We have been working with them for so long that we know where everything is and how everything works, he told me. Excusing himself to take yet another call from a future or former official. And then Kalin says this. When the new cabinet can't find something, they call us. That's what he says, you know. They call him. This is the passport seller.
He's running the country.
Then, in this book, this whistleblower talking about Trinidad, what they were doing, and they're doing it here now in St. Vincent. The spawn, the same sort of people who did this stuff for Donald Trump, Cambridge Analytica. What you're looking, Teresa, on your internet, they're tracking you. What? And if Teresa is interested in journalism, they send you messages which will target you to try to kerfuffle your mind, to see, tell you, well, you know, Ralph is dangerous to your freedom of the press, even though it's not so. But it just, and it goes and comes. Hear what, this is a whistleblower talking about their work in Trinidad. We were spying pure and simple with cover from Trinidad leaders. It felt bizarre, unreal to be observing what people were watching on a tiny faraway island. Somehow more like we were playing a video game than intruding on the private lives of actual people. Even today, thinking back on it, Trinidad seems more like a dream than anything, than something we actually did. But we did do it. The Trinidad project was the first time I got sucked into a situation that was grossly unethical, and frankly, it triggered in me a state of denial. As I watched those live streams, I didn't allow myself to actually picture the human prey, P-R-E-Y, people who had no idea that their private behavior was delighting sinister audiences half a world away. The Trinidad project was my first taste of this new wave of digital colonialism. We arrived unannounced with our superior technology and moral disregard, no better than the king's armies, except this time, unlike the conquerors of old, we were completely invisible. That's why you're getting your 914 numbers or 915. You're getting them from India, you're getting them from wherever. Three of these guys are in the UK. 2 of them are down here. And they're trying to play games with people's minds. Of course, these guys have been on my back for 22 years, but they're doing it more and more now because they have the digital tools. They're more sophisticated now. We, the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, have defeated them on every occasion, you know.
We'll talk some about that when we come back for our final segment. We also still need to talk about the question of leadership before the program ends. And somebody also wants to know how you envision the status of SVG and its people regionally and internationally in the next 5 years under a ULP or NDP government, and what sacrifices or commitments are necessary to achieve this vision. And we'll answer that when we come back from this final break.
Fire and dice. Together on one scratch ticket can make your dreams come true. Yes, it's Fire and Dice. The new $10 scratch game with thousands of dollars to be won. Match your numbers with any of the winning numbers and win the prize shown up to $125,000. You can double or triple your prize with Fire and Dice. Available from all lotto agents and runners. There's cash to catch with just a scratch.
Welcome back, Prime Minister. We have quite a lot to finish in this last segment.
I know.
That we still haven't touched. So there's a question that you will respond to, the last question, and then we definitely need to talk a little bit about the leadership issue and why leadership does in fact matter. And also we want to talk about the people who are in quarantine and who will get the opportunity to vote as citizens.
I would like to conclude the first matter which you raised. Late last year, earlier this year, I met one of the whistleblowers who actually worked in St. Vincent or worked on St. Vincent to try to stop me being elected and re-elected. And he said to me, for the passport sellers who are financing them. It used to be SCL and Cambridge Analytica, and they have been dissolved, but they have the same set of people who are functioning, and they get others. He said to me, Prime Minister, this continues to be a matter of interest to them, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, because they want your passport. They want to make a lot of money off it. And millions and millions, hundreds of millions are available for them to make. Crumbs will come here. He said, and both the passport sellers and the people in SCL, Cambridge Analytica, the spawns of these two entities, they say for them, both the passport sellers and them, it's now personal. Because you're the only leader in the Caribbean who has stood up to them. The only one whom they have not defeated and we will defeat them again. But before this campaign is out, they will spread more lies about me and the government. And they will try everything, but they wouldn't succeed. Because our people are inoculated sufficiently against this kind of recolonizing virus which they want to impose. In the same way, I don't mind being alone, you know. I stood up to Stanford, you know, when they wanted to take Leah out of the skies. St. Vincent and the Grenadines stood up to Stanford. And we are standing up to these people. And I'm doing it because you just don't, Teresa, look at the price of everything. You have to appreciate the value of things. And there's some politicians who think about the price of everything and the value of nothing. And they want to encourage people to accept this base transactional kind of a way that easy money will come now. Mm-hmm. But it can only be sustained with hard and smart work. And where our parents and grandparents saw development with unlimited supplies of cheap labor, we see, that is to say, the Unity Labour Party and I personally see development with unlimited supplies of knowledge and skills. In the case of the NDP, they see the way they're talking, passport, they see development with unlimited selling of passports, with no labor whatsoever. All you do is just sell passport, and according to them, have a ganja zone in North Windward, a free zone. So when you're done, you're leisurely here everywhere, not doing anything, just get passport money every month. Civil servants, you might get 2 salaries. You know what I mean? And when you feel okay about that, you go North Leeward to smoke weed. That's what they suggested.
The ganja issue, that's another question I think that has... Well,
on the marijuana issue, we are the government. We have behaved responsibly in saying, look, we have to have a medical cannabis industry, an export-driven, scientific-driven industry in which the traditional cultivator has a critical role. And we have dozens of traditional cultivators already licensed. Then, for the usage, you can have up to 2 ounces on your person. You don't get arrested for it. You don't get a record for it. You don't get jailed for it. But it's not legalized, it's depenalized. Because if you legalize it, or if you go and allow, as they're saying, 5 plants to be grown in your backyard, in every backyard, which is 50 feet of ganja, because the plant goes up to 10 feet. What it does, it incurs a reaction from countries which sanction you. So it's going to affect your correspondent banking system. People not going to be able to get their Western Union money without a lot of problem. You're not going to have your MoneyGram money without a lot of problem. And bona fide investors don't want to invest in a country where they come under scrutiny for being in defiance of international law. You become a rogue nation. And further to this, you plant 5 plants in your backyard because the requirement for the medical cannabis industry is so scientific, from seed to sale, that it will cross-pollinate and it will destroy all the open ganja fields in respect of medical cannabis. So you will just grow it for yourself. But even the ganja man who will normally grow it and sell it to somebody else, they won't have anybody to sell to because you got 50 feet of ganja in your yard. So on every count, the thing doesn't make any sense. It shows you half-baked idea and no real leadership.
Let's talk about leadership, yeah.
Dr. Friday has gone by with this thing with Patel Matthews. I know the fellow who advised Patel on this foolishness, you know. A fellow who, as things come to his head, he talks about it. And in the case of Dr. Friday, he's in Beckway. I don't think he ever grow peace in his life. He don't understand nothing about these things. You know, so the fellas tell him something and he'd go for it, hook, line, and sinker. As a leader, you have to believe in things, you have to know things, you have to. Frankly speaking, I couldn't vote for Dr. Friday after he said in the parliament that he has in his back pocket his VINCENT passport and his Canadian passport proudly in his front pocket. And yet he tells us he's one Vinci, that we are all one Vinci. He's half a Vinci. In fact, he's more Canadian because he said the Canadian passport is in his front pocket and he has it there proudly. Now, okay, I can understand an ordinary citizen having two citizenships. But you want to lead the country. You have your Canadian passport in your front pocket. And then, of course, he has not demonstrated strength over the years, Teresa. That's why I make the point. That is like a fellow learning to drive a vehicle with Sir James Mitchell sitting on the left side of the seat, with Kay Bacchus, Daniel Cummins, and Sinclair Leacock in the back seat. And they all giving him instructions. Because they're so disunited, the instructions are contradictory. Mash your accelerator, press the gas, stop, change your gear, turn left, turn right, blow your horn, no, don't blow your horn, until somebody just take away the steering wheel. You need in this time clear, strong leadership, which is what the Unity Labour Party offers. It's demonstrable. And the big test, which we have just had on leadership, is with COVID. They said I must close down the country. They say I must use draconian Chinese methods. They say I must impose a state of emergency, take away people's fundamental rights and freedoms. So a man can't go to the mountain, go change the cattle twice a day. He can't get up 4 in the morning to Tracine in Clay Valley to get sprat for his family. Can't do any of these things. And then you come in to tell me that I must also impose a curfew from 8 o'clock in the night till 6 in the morning. What sense does it make? The virus is Nicodemus, it travels only by night, and so on and so forth. These are mimic men and women in the opposition who haven't thought through any of these things, and they get them half-baked. What was their response to me when I presented all the arguments why we will have restrictions, but not these draconian measures? What was their response? Oh, you think you're bright. You know more than Holness in Jamaica. You know more than Rowley in Trinidad. You know more than Keith Mitchell. You know more than Chastity. I'm not saying I know more than any of them. All I'm saying is that in the circumstances of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and that the way we can build boots on the ground epidemiology, HMO nurses, doctors put the restraints. So you can't have the fete. You can't have music in Heritage Square, but you can go by Heritage Square still and eat your chicken wing. But the music ain't going to have your drink, have your beer, but the music ain't going to allow for a big gathering, and so on and so forth. They said that 50,000 Vincentians would be infected before the end of May. That didn't happen, and they say that 20, nothing like that, nearly, nothing come close to that from people, from somebody from outside, and then more than 2,000 would be dead. Sinclair Leacock was the champion of that, and he presents himself in a constituency as having serious judgment to lead, and Friday followed him. I mean, the thing is just foolishness, and people you do not want to change leadership in challenging and difficult times. Nobody does that. They didn't do that in Trinidad. They do that in St. Kitts. Guyana is a special case. Look at what is happening in the world. Safe hands.
Safe hands.
Steady mind, with a patience and a calm, and you are yourself.
And I think that's a perfect note on which to end the program. The guys are telling me that we're out of time. There's so many other things. We didn't get the chance to look at your manifesto. We didn't get to talk about the people who are in quarantine and isolation who will be given the opportunity to vote. But hoping that between now and November 5th, we'll be able to say something about those issues.
Well, on that latter point, there was a discussion today. And if you permit me, with the CMO and the parties and the Christian Council organize it, there would only be a couple of persons by then, a few persons in quarantine or isolation. Mm-hmm. They will vote after 5 o'clock, between 5 and 5:30. An additional half an hour would be put in the regulations by the Attorney General. And that any day, if you come in after the 31st, you would not be able to vote, because the CMO will say that you would not have completed 5 days.
Okay.
And so that nobody should be worried that when they go to the polls between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m., that they're going to be anybody in the line with COVID. In that way, she can relax more the thing about the number of feet you should be apart and so on. Masks would be available for the persons who want to wear them, but it is not mandatory. It would only be a question of if you choose to do so. It would not be a compulsory thing, so that we don't want to affect negatively the turnout.
Okay.
So nobody has anything to worry about in that regard. And the only person who may be adversely affected, who may not get to come and vote, is one or two persons who would come in after the 31st. That's the story in brief.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. I know you have a very busy schedule as well, and thanks for taking the time to sharing with us. Best of luck on November 5th.
Thank you very much.
That's the program for today. We'll see you again next week. Thank you for tuning in.